In this video, we're going to focus on some new vocabulary. So we're going to use this data table up here to help us define some of these vocab words, the first one of which is individuals. And basically all the individuals are the objects that are being described in the set of data. So you can see here in our data table, our student names are Alvin, Simon, Theodore, and all of these variables represent these three individuals. So right here we've got our individuals. Then the rest of these categories in our spreadsheet are all different types of variables. And what the variables are, they're just characteristics of the individual. Variables can be broken down further into two separate groups. The first group is called quantitative variables. Another name for it is numerical. The other group is called qualitative variables or categorical. So quantitative variables take on a quantity, they're numbers. So it's data with numerical values. But we want to be careful because they need to be numerical values that it makes sense to make an average. The other type of variable is called a qualitative or a categorical variable. Basically what it sounds like is it's data that is categories. Now we want to be careful here because even though they're categories or groups, they can still be a number. We would just want to make sure that the numbers in this case, it does not make sense to average. Alright, so let's look at our table so far. We know that this table consists of variables. The variables in this table we can see are birth month, year born, height, favorite candy, etc. All of these headings up here are variables, with the exception of the first one because they are the individuals. All of these variables describe the three individuals shown. We know that the variables can be broken up into two groups. We've got our quantitative data and our categorical or our qualitative. So looking at the variables we have in the data table, the quantitative ones are the numbers. So birth month, well, birth month is a category. You can see that the words are categories, so that is going to be in our qualitative section. The next variable is year born. Now, even though year born is a number, that would be considered a category because it doesn't make sense to average all of the birth years. All right, next we have height. It does make sense to average heights, so that would be considered a quantitative variable. Favorite candy, again, is a category. You're given a word or a group as the response. Next, we have number of siblings. Again, it does make sense to find the average number of siblings in your class, so we would say that that is numerical. Have you been to Canada? Well, the only responses you can get are yes and no, which falls into the category group. And finally, we have our math percentage, which is definitely going to be a quantitative variable since you can find the average of these numbers. So you can break these variables even further. So let's look at the quantitative variables first. Quantitative variables can be divided into one of two groups. We have discrete variables and we have continuous variables. Discrete variables are values such that there are distinct gaps between values. Our continuous variable are variables that can have any numerical value within a certain interval. So if we go back and look at our list of quantitative variables, we've got our height, we've got number of siblings, we've got math percentage. So if we talk about height, you could be any height in a certain range of values. So for example, I could be 65.125 inches, or my best friend could be 63.3321 inches. So height could be any possible number within a certain range, and therefore we would consider that to be continuous. Our other variable we have is number of siblings. The number of siblings possible are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. It is not possible to have 1.5 siblings. It's not possible to have 1.25 siblings. So there are definitely gaps between the possibility of numbers. So this would be considered a discrete variable. All right, math percentages, again, they could be any possible value within 0 to 100. So therefore, it must be a continuous. So to help visually, discrete would be number of siblings because it is only these numbers, it's nothing in between. However, a continuous variable would be one that could be anything in a certain interval. So even if your interval is from 0 to 3, if it could be any number between 0 and 3, it would be continuous. Finally, we can break down a qualitative variable into two groups. It's called binary is one group, and if it's not binary, then the other group we just consider to be other. Binary is categorical variables that can only take on two possible categories. So for example, in our qualitative group, we have birth month. Well, we know birth month, there's 12 possibilities, so that can't be binary. All right, same reasoning with year born. There's definitely more than two options, therefore that would have to be other. Same reasoning goes for favorite candy. The have you been to Canada question can only result in one and two answers, yes or no, and since there's only two possibilities, we would consider that to be binary. Using this information from the notes, please complete the practice problems on the next page.